everybody. This is Cayci with Everfree Network, and I am at the My Little Pony Fair 2014 in Nashville, Tennessee. And we have here today one of the VIP guests, Bonnie Zacherle, creator of the My Little Pony brand. Hi, Bonnie.
Hello.
Thank you very much for joining us today.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
How are you enjoying the convention so far?
I'm enjoying it a lot. It's like coming to some place where you're queen for a day or a weekend.
Indeed, indeed. You have a lot of fans here.
I guess I do. You don't realize it until you see them all lined up in the hall.
Now, I was in attendance at the first My Little Pony convention that you attended as well, and at the time, you seemed not quite sure what to make of all the attention. Have things changed since then?
Well, I still can't make out why or how or when this all happened, but the first time I went, I wasn't really aware of the collectors. And it's not just children, it's not just girls, it's now adults, women, men, and it was not something that I'd planned on or even thought in my wildest dreams would happen, but I think it's all wonderful.
Just lightning struck on the My Little Pony brand.
I guess so.
Who knew?
Not me.
Well, I was wondering, do you consider yourself an artist? Were you always an artistic person?
Sure. I always enjoyed drawing as a child, especially animals. That was always my thing. And I did go to college and I majored in illustration. So I'm a drawer and my thing is characters. I enjoy developing characters.
Where did you go to school?
I went to Syracuse University in Upper State New York.
Okay, all right. Well, how did you begin your relationship with Hasbro?
Actually, my first job out of college was working for a greeting card company, Rosecraft Greeting Cards, which is no longer around. But I was working there for a long time and I wasn't making as much money as I liked. So I did freelance work on the side. And after my regular job, I would go down to Hasbro, which was about half an hour from my other job. And I would do freelance work for them. And they said, if you ever get tired of doing greeting cards, come on down and we'll give you a job.
Very nice.
And they did. Later on, I found out that my current company, the card company, was being sold. And they said, oh, everything will stay the same. Don't worry about it. Everyone will have their jobs. And my boss and his boss were leaving. And I thought, yeah, I think it's time to go.
Oh, I think that was fortuitous.
It was, and I'm glad I did. I love doing toys.
Many years ago, I read something online. I'd like to ask you if you know if it is all true.
Okay.
It's that Hasbro did market research and asked little girls what they'd dream about at night, and the answer was overwhelmingly horses, and thus My Little Pony. Does that ring a bell at all for you?
I never heard that. I never heard that at all.
Just goes to show not everything you read online is true.
Well, that's for sure. Believe that.
Well, where did the inspiration come from for My Little Pony?
Well, as a child, I was the daughter of an Army veterinarian. So we traveled around, to different localities every couple of years. And my father, being a veterinarian, was in charge of all the animals. And when we lived in Japan, I was about 4 or 5. And he was in charge of all the animals that were in quarantine, trying to get in or out of the country. I don't know which, but one of the animals was a pony. So of course I fell in love with it, and I got to ride it around as much as I wanted to. And so I wanted a horse, and my father promised me a horse when we got out of the Army. And this is a long story, isn't it?
That's
Anyway,
all right. It's fascinating.
By the time he got out of the Army, I was in high school. So we moved to our dream house in the country. But he said, you can have a horse, but you have to get up early every morning and take care of it. You have to come home every night and take care of it, muck the stalls, feed it, and exercise it and groom it. And you can't go away on weekends, you can't go away on vacations, and you can't go away to school. And I'm like, well, it's either a horse or friends. So I opted for friends. But when I went to work for Hasbro, I thought, as a child, I didn't play much with dolls or any conventional toys. I just wanted a horse. That's all I wanted. So I thought, well, I'll make one. I'll make my own little miniature horse to play with.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And the rest is history.
Indeed, it is. So, could you tell me about your intentions for the toy?
Well, it was my intention that it be a miniature horse and that it be realistic colors and types of horses: Appaloosa, Dapple Gray, Palomino, Pintos. And my favorite was a black horse. I don't know, there's no breed for black horses, I don't think, but I always wanted to do them. So that was my intention, and that little girls would play with it as though it were a real horse. And of course, that didn't happen. Marketing got into it and suggested I make them pink and purple,
Of course.
of course. And I wasn't happy with that, but they thought I should test it with little girls. And the rest, again, is history.
So, how did they end up being on, I guess, the chubby side back then?
Well, the first generation were mine, and they were chubby because my pony was a little chubby. And I think a lot of ponies get that way because they're short in stature. They're not long-legged thoroughbreds,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of more appealing to a younger age anyway.
Now, it started off with My Pretty Pony, which was, rather large, about a foot high or so.
It was.
How did My Little Pony get shrunken down?
Well, I presented the horse idea several years in a row, and it never made it out of research and development. My boss, and probably several others, shot it down saying, "Bonnie, little girls aren't like you. They like to cook and clean and iron." And I'm like, "You must be kidding me."
Was this the late 70s at the time?
Yes, yes, it
Hmm.
was. And so I presented it, without success, 3 years in a row, never made it out of our department. Then, lo and behold, there was a new kind of R&D, not R&D, but blue sky department, they'd call it. And a friend of mine said, "Bonnie, our boss has this idea, and it's really the same as yours, only it's not a horse, it's a pony. And he wants to make it big and, have all of these extra mechanical things in it. I think it has blinking eyes
Mm-hmm. I
and
think if you pull the tail and
yeah,
then
I don't know what all it did.
has a
Something
little
under the
tab. Yeah,
chin.
a tab on the neck, and
I
it
just
did
saw that
things.
today. That's the way it was supposed to work. But anyway, that was his idea of what it should look like. And it sold a couple of million, which in those days was not bad. Then his boss, who was the VP of marketing, took it home to his wife and asked her what she thought of it. She said, "Well, it's good, I guess, but I think it should be small and soft, have combable hair, and played with like a doll." So, consequently, he took his wife's advice smartly
Mm-hmm.
and came back to me and said, "Listen, I want you to make exactly the same toy, only shrink it down and make it soft and, combable hair. And don't change a thing about it." I didn't even redraw it. I think I just shrunk the original drawings.
The large pink My Pretty Pony is effectively peachy.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right. So that's how it got to be that small. It was kind of
Okay.
a roundabout way of getting to my original idea, except for the colors. And that was a different story.
Mm-hmm.
Did I already mention that? Yeah.
Marketing.
Yes, marketing.
Marketing got
And
involved.
that happens a lot.
We are hearing that a lot here from you and Liz.
Yeah, it's true. We know. And, I always thought, marketing is really who I work for. And it's the truth. If it doesn't make it out of marketing, it doesn't get in the line.
Well, I guess you got to sell toys. That's the business.
Exactly.
There's also my understanding is that the My Little Pony TV show in the 80s was made by an actual advertising agency.
You
Is
know,
that true?
I'm not exactly aware of what all went on, but I was talking with Liz, who was working in my department at the time. I had left by the time Pony came out.
Okay.
So I don't know what happened after the fact, but she said it was the advertising agency that Hasbro had that actually came up with the idea.
Wow. I mean, a lot of people say that the TV show was a toy ad, and they're not being
And
facetious. It's quite literal.
it's actually probably the truth.
So, how long were you involved in the My Little Pony line, all said and done?
I've just seen Liz's presentation, and she was only at Hasbro for about a year. And when she came in, I think Pony was in the works. So, it wasn't probably more than a year because it doesn't take that long from sketch drawings through sculpting and okaying, the molding and things like that. And then we hand painted the models and things of that sort. So it wasn't that long.
How long is the process from initial idea to a toy being on the shelves?
Well, it does vary. I remember we did a line for Sesame Street and the whole thing was turned around in 7 weeks, if you can believe that.
Wow.
It's usually a number of months. I think Liz mentioned 6 months. She's reminding me of all these things.
It's been a while.
Yes, it has been a while for me. Not for her, but for me.
Now, did you have any input on other characters beyond the original 6 collector ponies?
At that point, I was working for another company. I was working for Parker Brothers up in Beverly, which was, a very nice, cushy job where they originally paid me to start a line of toys. And that took about 3 months to do, but they kind of farmed it out to another New York agency that wanted to make it bigger and better. And, I worked on it for a while, but, and I'm getting away from the main
Well, that's all
subject.
right. I was going to ask you what other toy lines you've worked on.
Well, that was called Nerfles. And the idea was that Nerf balls was really the only toy that Parker Brothers had. So I created a line of toys that were Nerf balls as heads, little egg cup bodies, and different hats and hair and things like that. So you can exchange them and make different characters. But it took them 4 years to do something that Hasbro would have done in 6 months, I'm sure. But, they wanted to make it bigger and better. And you can't do that. You have to let the natural process take hold. As in the case of Pony, that wasn't really the big introduction, that toy fair. There was another line that they put in a lot of advertising money behind. And somehow it got hidden away on the shelves. But for some reason, I heard the story. And again, you hear stories, but it makes sense that one of the executives for Toys R Us liked it and put it right at the checkout around Easter time. And it was, really a nice thing to put in an Easter basket, I think.
You mean the original 6 ponies?
Yeah, yeah,
Well, that would be fitting. They were pastel, very spring colors at
exactly.
the time.
I know. And when my friend, the marketing director, called me, she said, Ponies are doing very well. And I said, well, it's Easter. It's a nice thing to put in the basket. And then she'd call a little bit later and say, Ponies are galloping off the shelves. And, at that point, it was just taking off. And it started with a very small line, I think only a couple of accessories. But, it just kept growing and growing. And it really has a life of its own.
It really does now. Why do you think it caught on?
I personally think it caught on because it didn't have any mechanical things. It didn't have any technical things. Little girls had to put their own personalities into each individual pony. And, when play is open ended like that, it causes children to have stories of their own, storylines and personalities in the characters. And it's a great way to play. And we used to call them watch me toys, little wind ups that were great, that a lot from Asia. But you look at it a few times and what else are you going to do? You've seen it all.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have to put your own personality into the toy, that's when it starts to go and grow and,
It can be years and years of enjoyment
Exactly.
of a little horse that doesn't do much else.
That's right. And becomes a friend.
Which pony was your favorite?
Well, I think Of my original ones, Cotton Candy, which was the first pink one.
Nice and simple.
It was very simple.
Pink and pink with
Yeah.
just little white specks is, well, now they call it a cutie mark.
I know. They didn't call it anything. We called them rump designs. And my friend Liz, who took on the pony line after I left, would say, Pony, I'm still painting pony rumps and, forever. That's my job. And she painted a lot of them, I'm sure.
Oh, I believe it. So, what is your favorite interaction with a fan now that you have been interacting?
I think it's wonderful because this pony fair, especially, I was a bit taken back by the collectors because I didn't expect to see, grown women for the most part that still collected My Little Pony after so many years. But now the next generation has come in, and it's nice to see mothers and daughters enjoying ponies. And I think, well, this is great. It has the longevity of the collectors, but it still appeals to the little girls.
Yeah, the little girls here at the convention are rather adorable.
And boys, too, I
Oh,
must admit.
yes,
There are a couple
actually,
of boys,
there are
too.
some boys here.
I know, it's fun.
Bronies in training.
Yes, exactly.
Now, speaking of bronies and the male gender, I have heard that it was your intention for My Little Pony to be a gender-neutral toy.
It was. Well, I was the first manager of preschool toys at Hasbro, and there were only 3 of us. And with preschool toys, you try to make it gender neutral. So therefore, I mean, the realistic colors and everything, I mean, why wouldn't little boys want to play with it?
Oh, yeah. Cowboys and Indians,
Yeah,
they have
exactly.
brown horses.
They always had horses. And, I got upset when fathers especially would get upset with their children, their boys who were interested in ponies. And I'm like, it's a horse, really. What's the problem?
Mm-hmm.
But
How did it become a girl's toy or marketed as a girl's toy?
I don't know exactly why, but that by changing the colors, it automatically became a girl's toy.
No, fair enough. Fair
I
enough.
think that was it. And I think marketing thought it would have more longevity. Preschool toys, obviously only appeal or are supposed to only appeal to children up to the age of maybe 5.
So now that you have attended several events where bronies are in attendance, what do you think about bronies and that phenomenon?
Well, I think it's great. It really was a surprise to me. That wasn't my intention. Well, I shouldn't say it wasn't my intention. Every toy you want to be a collectible, but the fact that the collectors have kind of made pony go on and last for 30 plus years was a surprise. But the fact that it would have a male audience was even more surprising. But I think that's due mostly to the television show,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which has very interesting and nice storylines, which I don't know that the original My Little Pony really did. As you said, they were probably more meant to sell more ponies.
Well, it worked.
It did work.
Those collectors are still here.
Yes, they are. But I think that's in great due to the show, the TV show now, which is lovely. I love the graphics and the colors. I think are marvelous.
That's fantastic. Now we're talking about the 4th generation of My Little Pony, and you weren't involved in its creation and long left the company, but it is a continuation of your legacy. So how do you feel about how My Little Pony has evolved as a brand?
Well, it has gone through many permutations, some that I thought were nice and some that I thought were reminiscent of my own, some that were not at all like my own. And even this current generation doesn't look much like mine, but it has a very nice flair and as a cartoon show. And if I were drawing it today, I'd like to think that mine would be more cartoony and have more personality rather than what happened. But, things evolve. And I really like the treatment that they're doing right now.
As an illustrator and an artist, what advice do you have for other artists who want to go into your line of work?
It's a lot of heartache in that only I can't tell you how many designs or drawings or ideas you come up with And out of all of those, a handful of them make it to market. And out of those, I I can't think of too many that ever reach 30 years plus, like My Little Pony. The only other one that I know of is, well, Mr. Potato Head, which I also worked on.
Mm-hmm.
But people say, oh, you created Mr. Potato Head. I just changed the design, and it was probably the third or fourth change in the design. Barbie's another one. Hot Wheels, I guess, but that's not really a character.
Okay. Well, as one of the collectors, a longtime collector, and a childhood fan of My Little Pony, I would like to thank you. You
Well,
have
thank
definitely
you.
you've
Really.
definitely affected my life. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Well, everybody, this has been Bonnie Zacherle, creator of My Little Pony, and I'm Cayci for Everfree Network. Thanks for listening.